Hello, this is a module on the MOOC on media law and ethics. This module deals about the media acts enacted in India over the last 70 years. Actually, if you look at the first newspaper that was started in 1780, from that till now that we have been coming across various kinds of media, be it print, television, radio also. We have telegraph acts, we have internet based thing, we have broadcasting related acts and new media related things, then convergent related things. So, there are plenty of acts have been enacted. How to understand that? Can we try to understand that the logic behind or the rationale or the major domains on which India enacted laws? One of the author has arguing that there are 7 areas under which you can understand the media acts that has been enacted right from 1847 when we first enacted the Copyright Act in 1847. So, from that day till now that we have been making laws only on the major domains like 7 areas. The first one is government control, the second one is executive and official secrecy, and the third one is judiciary and contempt of court, and the fourth one is parliament and its privileges, and the next is about public order and morality, and the sixth one is about privacy and defamation, and the seventh one is about accountability of the press. So, if you dissect, if you divide the entire 70 years of lawmaking, you will come into either fit into any one of this only. That is what the author is arguing. So, we will see one by one. The first one is about government control. How the government has been continuously controlling or managing the press by having them under their control. A central characteristics of Indian press law has been direct government control. This pattern was set by the British and continued even after independence. So, it was started when the first Sepoy Mutiny was first enacted, then that was when it was happened, then the government took a very strong control over the press right from the beginning till now that the control is being continued. That is what the author is arguing, that it started from British period and continued through independence and post emergency, and if you look at them, they are in the form of official harassment. If you look at the pre-independence period, the harassment was very clear and we can understand that how the press was controlled. The second one is about litigation. Litigation that even the post-independent government also, they have been strongly putting cases against the journalists, editors and everyone, and deportation of editors, shift them from here to somewhere, to Andaman and other place. That was happened during pre-independence period, but that is not happening right now. So, that were the 3 areas in which the press was controlled by the government. So, throughout the 19th century, the British altered between 2 models of press regulation. If you look at them, the British had only 2 models. The first one is assigning responsibility to the editors and ask them to be accountable by giving the names of editors, printers and publisher, so that responsibility is being given, but your entire control is with me. That is what the attitude of the British press, British government during the first one. The second aspect is comprehensive licensing system. So, some of the governor generals in the pre-independence period India, they were able to give us a kind of licensing, a liberal licensing, a controlled licensing, something like gagging and other thing. India, the post-independence India also continued with some kind of control, licensing and heavy licensing, that was between 51 to 57, that was the initial period of independence. So, we had no a clear idea about how to manage our resources, our own voices and other things. So, 51 to 57 we had a very strong licensing system. So, if you look at 1954, the registrar was appointed, the registrar of newspapers of India was appointed and he was given a free hand to manage the press. So, they vested with the power to collect extensive information about the press. In 1954, the press registrar was given extensive power to, so that he can visit the press and collect information whatever that is required. So, the registrar has access to all records. He may enter any premises within the office hours and ask for records about, ask for questions about the information required by this particular act. So, this is the way that the government was continuously managing the press. And if you look at the article 19, Constitution has guaranteed the freedom of expression through article 19. However, there is article 19(2). Which controls, which there is a clause called reasonable restrictions, which means that the press can be controlled on certain grounds like nothing can be prevented in the law to control or the prevent the government from controlling the press in the form of when the press is entering into the criticizing the neighboring relations and to think about other external relations. So, there were some grounds on which the reasonable restrictions were given to the press that was being controlled through the constitutional article 19(2). Unless such law imposes reasonable restrictions on the excess of the right conferred by the said subclause in the interests of sovereignty and integrity of the India, security of the state, friendly relations with the foreign states, public order, decency or morality, or in relation to contempt of court, defamation or incitement to an offence. These were the major grounds on which the restrictions were planned and imposed. And the makers of the Indian Constitution did not pay much attention to the freedom of the press. If you look at the American and the UK Constitution, there is a specific word to call it freedom of the press. But if you look at the Indian Constitution, you can't see a word called freedom of the press, because constitutional makers, they did not thought about giving extraordinary freedom to one particular class called press. They thought that the Supreme Court made it in one time very clear that going beyond those ordinary individuals, nobody is beyond nobody above the individual, nobody above the citizenship of any person in the country. So, no privilege attached to the position of the press as such, as distinct from the right of the citizen. So, citizen right is more important than anything else. That is what the government felt and Supreme Court interpreted. So, Article actually 19(1) and 2, they deal with the freedom of the press. So, this aspect, these were the major areas through which the government controlled. If you move on to the second aspect called the executive and the official secrecy, during pre-independence period, that was the order of the day, that the government wanted to keep everything under their control. The laws designed to protect the executive in India can be traced to the colonial period. Anything related to secrecy or the controlling of the information, you can go to the colonial period only. As soon as the official secrecy legislation was enacted in Britain in 1889, so Britain enacted some law to control the official secrets. So, immediately that was duplicated in the then Indian Parliament. That was purely a consolidating measure. They said that it is not to control anything, it is not to suppress anything, rather it is a consolidating measure where the press is being given control, right. So, the Official Secrets Act was to prevent the disclosure of any information rather than dealing with spying of state security. Further amendments in 1967, the amendments were made in the Official Secret Act. Actually, government wanted to have a further liberalization of the policies, and they want to open up the government policies and documents. But even then, the penalties and the persecution were continued. So, though there was some kind of liberalization in the Official Secret Act, it was not totally liberated. There were a lot of control over the press. Now, we can move on to the third aspect. This is about largely about the judiciary, that how judiciary's independence should be promoted, and how whoever that is not confident with the judiciary or who are contempting or people who are criticizing judiciary were being taken into task. So, the law of contempt affects the press by punishing those who scandalize judges, violate gag orders, refuse to disclose information to the court or interfere with the due administration of the justice. Discharge of administration, the jurisprudence cannot be questioned, the jurisprudence cannot be taken to task by the press. So, they have a very clear act called contempt of court. The power of the judges to punish contempt can be traced to the introduction of English style court of records. That was the one. The English style of court of record is the one that enables the judiciary to have enormous powers, which automatically possess the power to punish for the contempt. The Contempt of Court Act 1971 was enacted after 11 years of parliamentary debate. Actually, India was not prepared to go for a contempt of court. We thought that judiciary is part of the democracy and we need to have that, but people should be given a freedom to criticize to a certain level. So, there was a large discussion for about 11 years, and at last we passed the 1971 contempt of court. That was based on the premise that extensive reform would require a constitutional amendment. Unless you go for a constitutional amendment, you cannot think about the contempt of court proceedings. The Contempt of Court Act introduces the categories of civil contempt and criminal contempt. Anything written, anything in the form of written word or signs or spoken or visibly represented, they are all come under this category. Any matter which tend to or actually does scandalize or lower the authority of any court. So, the lowering the authority of the court or prejudicing the judgments or interfering with the due course of any judicial proceedings. If you interfere with the proceedings of the court, then that amounts to contempt of court, or interfere with the obstruct the administration of the justice. So, in the entire jurisprudence, if there is any interference, then that has been taken into task in the form of contempt of court. Now, we are moving on to the parliamentary and its privileges. What kind of privileges were given to parliament and how that has been made as a laws, right. Over the period we have enacted laws to protect our privileges in the parliament, and press was given to a certain limit and we were allowed to report certain things and not to allow the other things. The original constitution extended to central and state legislatures identical to those of the House of Commons in England. So, the House of Commons in England enacted something with regard to privileges and contempt of parliament also. So, we followed the same thing at the level of Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha and all the state legislatures also. With regard to law making, we had the similar idea of House of Commons, and the legislative immunity in respect of anything said or done in parliament or publicized under its authority is being questioned. Although fair and accurate reporting in parliamentary proceeding was immunized in 1956 and restricted access to the courts in such matters made the privileged committees of the various legislatures the exclusive non-appealable forum in cases alleging newspaper breaches of privileges. So, this is a free hand given to the legislature against the press and the press commission to conclude that press has been uniquely treated. Parliamentary privilege has been manipulated by legislators to attract public attention, conduct vendettas and embarrass opponents. Most cases have no deeper significance than attempts by politicians to attract favorable publicity and or embarrass opponents. Apologies are often utilized to resolve such cases with either imprisonment or reprimand with the loss of credentials being imposed on journalists only in the refuse to apologize. So, the conflict particularly with regard to press and the parliament is regarding, there was some area that there were a lot of conflict, particularly when you report inaccurately, when you are not able to make it a professional reporting, then that becomes a conflict number one. And then publication of expunged material. The parliament speaker says that this should not be recorded, which is, this is out of the record, this is out of the public domain, which means that those things are being expunged from the records of the parliament itself or the legislatures itself. So, press cannot do that. So, normally a conflict comes from there, and violation of the legislative position. What is the position of the legislature, that is more important, and the attacks on integrity of parliament or its members or minister or the speaker. So, there has always been a tension between formal recognition of press freedom and parliamentary sensitivity to criticism. Press freedom is one side and sensitivity to the criticism, that they are not ready to, even the judges are not ready and the parliament is not ready to accept criticism. So, these were the grounds on which laws were enacted. If you look at the public, if you come out from judges and parliamentarians, there is one area, the public morality is there, public order is there. So, what kind of legislatures were made to control the larger public order so that we can have a peaceful life, and what kind of morality standards were decided by the legislatures, that is one area. The British system of press control appeared at two levels, the tools of registration and censorship. This is one area, and the forfeiture of deposit system were supplemented by criminal legislation. So, registration, licensing, forfeiture and deposits are the form in which one area of control was there. Actually, the system continued even today. If you look at the controlling system, that the kind of thing is being controlled even today during national emergency, particularly during emergencies, this is being continued. After independence, there is a ill will between communities and affecting national integration, and the spreading of false and malicious rumors were considered as sedition, major area called sedition. So, we want to have a public order and morality by controlling out of the national interest, anything is reported that is being controlled as seditious material. If you look at the second area, the English law, that is about morality. The English law includes material dealing with violence, drugs, whereas Indian obscenity deals with mostly about the sex. And one judge even suggested that a clumsy family planning program might fall within this particular section. Beyond morality and order, if you move further, then you will come to know about the privacy and defamation. What level that one can have the privacy and what level the public information comes. So, what is the border and how to negotiate the spaces. This is one major critical area where lot of conflicts came, and even now that even after about 70 years, we have been struggling to define what is privacy and how long that the public space can enter into and what is defamation. These things are being constantly defined and refined, and we have been moving to the more civilized form of governance. England, there are two levels of defamation, civil and criminal. India does not recognize an omnibus right to privacy, but to protect diverse types of privacy interests in the people. We do not believe in the omnibus privacy of giving to individuals. We think that there is a limit to have privacy even if you are a citizen of this country. The laws of trespassing, defamation, nuisance and copyright protect the right to solitude and seclusion. One has the right to seclude himself from the entire humanity, and you can keep yourself, the privacy limits, you have every right to keep yourself away from that. So, these laws provide you to have the privacy. The Indian law of confidentiality is developed only in regard to government documents. The secrecy was with regard to the government documents, which are protected by official secrets legislation. The last in the series is accountability. So, the government control of television and radio leaves the press as the sole private institution performing vital public media functions in the media. When press and radio, television were the larger control of government until 1990, the press was the only domain which has the private limit. So, the primary role of the press are information dissemination, investigation, truth verification, public discussion and opinion stimulation. So, these public functions impose considerable responsibility on the press and at the same time serve as a basis on which the press can claim special powers and privileges.